You're listening to Beyond the Arc on KRNU 2, Lincoln, Nebraska.
Welcome into this special segment edition of Beyond the Arc on KRNU 2. And also on our YouTube page, youtube.com/Beyond the Arc. Glad you could join us for this special edition podcast, Nebrasketball edition. Nebraska falls to Wisconsin 72-61 at the Kohl Center in Madison. Tommy Rezach, Kellan Havigan, Reid Hunsaker, and Zach Penrice as the Huskers now 13-12 on the year and 4-7 in the Big Ten. Nebraska's now lost 3 of their last 4 games as well, and they come home Saturday to face Penn State. More on the Nittany Lions in just a little bit, but Zach, I'll start with you. Nebraska had a lead at one point. They led by as much as 6. It was a 2-point game. Kind of reminded me of their performance at Creighton. Nebraska didn't shoot the greatest, didn't make that many threes, but we're still hanging around. Very, very close right out of the gate to start the second half, and then Wisconsin just kind of pulls away to win by double digits. Had it on here in the studio. I know we didn't get to watch it all play for play, but just kind of looking at these numbers and seeing what you did, thoughts on this game overall?
Well, I think that's a very good comparison. I mean, you and I were at that Creighton game in Omaha, and I think that we remember how close it was at the half. Nebraska had no business being in that game, and yet they were, and they were in it a few minutes into the second half, and then Creighton just blew them out of the water, and Wisconsin did something similar. I mean, Nebraska only losing by 11, it seems almost generous the way that they played in the second half, and they were in foul trouble. Just you look down the line and their personal fouls, it's just 3 different players with 4 fouls, 3 different players with 3 fouls, and having 10 more team fouls than Wisconsin really hurts them. And when you have some of your best players on the bench a lot of the time, like Andrew White, like Ty Webster, it really hurts your team.
No Siobhan Shields, as we mentioned.
And having no Siobhan Shields, the first game that he has missed since 2013 really hurts.
106 career straight starts.
Yeah, it's
crazy.
It's a very impressive number. Hasn't missed a game since his freshman year coming into tonight. But looking big picture at this team, I mean, you talked about it in the offseason, the recruiting class that they have coming in. It was supposed to be a very good class, and it was supposed to be one of the best in the country, ranked highly by ESPN.com. And we hadn't really been seeing a lot of that. But the last 2 games, Tommy, we've been seeing it. These freshmen are showing up, and they're showing up big. I mean, it's too late in the season, in my opinion, now. I mean, if they want to make any noise in March, it's gonna have to come in Indianapolis, and that's where it's gonna have to start. And that does not seem likely for this team. So looking big picture here, Glenn Watson was the team's leading scorer tonight with 16 points. He's getting steals every game. He's one of the top players in the Big Ten in steals, right up there with Melo Trimble, who's a very good guard for Maryland. You see Jack McVay finally starting to knock down threes consistently. Michael Jacobson's doing well. So you see these freshmen coming in, and they're finally starting to show up. It's going to be huge for Nebraska in the years to come, and especially down the stretch here to get some confidence going into next season.
Yeah. Just excuse me real quick, Kellan. Jack McVay has played in all 25 games, came into tonight averaging 16 minutes a game, about 5 points a game, 36% from the floor, and then 36% from 3 and also 36% from the floor. He's made 22 out of 68 threes on the year coming into tonight. McVay starting for Shields, 2 of 5 from 3, 3 of 7 from the floor, and he finishes with 8 points. Kellan, what were you going to say?
Well, here's my quick thoughts on this, and you said it. Glenn Watson's got 16 points. Here's the difference, though. He got 16 points on 14 attempts. That should equal, if you're good shooting night, would equal about 20 points. It's got to be better. How many times are we going to sit here and make excuses for this team? We've done it for years. And I've said it time and time and time and time again. If you want to become a good team, you've got to kick the excuses out the door. You've got to push on. Once again, you've got an opportunity to go on the road and win a game. I get it, you're without your best player, but you said it on the radio show earlier tonight.
Right.
You said that, you know what, you got to learn without Siobhan. And tonight they didn't get it done. I get it, Wisconsin's won a lot of games straight, but you can't make up excuses. You've got to push through and find ways to win. Wisconsin shoots 34% average on 3, but you know what? Nebraska is one of the worst teams in the Big Ten at defending the three-point percentage. How many games do you have to play to figure out how to defend a three-point shot?
No.
I don't understand some of these things that we continue to do, and if you want to be an NCAA tournament team, quit making these same mistakes. It's just, I just am mind-boggled by some of the things that we continue to do. We're taking Glenn Watson misses layup after layup after layup. We've got Benny Parker taking shots he shouldn't be taking. You've got useless drives to the basket that don't make any sense whatsoever. There's no continuity. There's little to no discipline on the offensive side of the ball that even give us a chance to win. It's unacceptable.
Yeah. Reid, before Zach or I jump back in, any immediate reaction to this game?
Well, I think you got to move on from this game, and I think you still have to keep your eyes set on the March Madness tournament. If you're not, then you shouldn't be on the team. You should always be thinking that you have a chance to win every game that you suit up for. I think this team needs to take every game one step at a time, one game at a time, and take it as a must-win. And look at this Wisconsin game and look, like Kellan said, look at ways how you can improve and fix some of the mistakes that we have on the defensive side of the ball.
Yeah, the narrative certainly has changed. Like in December, early January, Nebraska has no post presence. Nebraska, Tim Miles, they switched to a more of a zone defense. Nebraska only giving up 16 points in the paint. They outscored the Badgers 24-16 in the paint. But then, as Kellan said, they just leave guys open on the perimeter, and you see it 11 of 18 Wisconsin was from three. That was no secret. They hit 13 threes to beat the Buckeyes last week, and now they hit 11 out of 18 threes to beat the Huskers for their sixth straight win. Now Wisconsin 15-9 and 7-4 in the Big Ten after starting 1-4 in the conference. My goodness, what a turnaround by interim head coach Greg Gard, who's been in that program for 20-plus years. Great performance, and like I said, Vito Brown, really the unsung hero, that junior forward, who only averages 8 points a game, came out, scored 18 points. Nigel Hayes, who, again, that's no secret, one of the best players in the Big Ten. He was a guy you had to key up on. Wasn't the case. Nigel Hayes, 20 points, 7 of 14 from the floor, 5 of 6 from the free throw line, a couple of rebounds as well. And then Zach Showalter, again, a guy who only averages about 4, 5, 6 points a year. 4 to 6 points a game, 10 points, 5 rebounds, 3 assists for that young man. And Zach, I come back to you. It really just looks like fouls were just a big problem in this game, and that's just really frustrating. Because Wisconsin was the most fouled team in the Big Ten. Tim Miles said that in his press conference yesterday. And you look at the free throw totals, Nebraska 9 of 12. That's still a pretty good percentage. But Wisconsin went to the free throw line 28 times, made 17 of them. That right there, that plays a huge part in this loss.
Absolutely. Hard to beat teams when you give up 28 free throws and you keep fouling and continue.
When you have to keep fouling to even have a remote chance. Yep.
Right, and what else are you going to do? You're going to sit there and let them shoot threes all day? It's and like Kellan says, that the way that they can defend, or the way that Nebraska just can't defend a three is so frustrating to watch. You see, the post presence was there tonight. Somehow it was there, and it's rarely there, but tonight it was.
Wisconsin was, sorry to interrupt you, but Wisconsin was a better matchup because their biggest guy was about 6'8". They didn't have a Jeff Grossell or Daniel Ochefu or what was his name, Ponder from Northwestern to just torch us down low. So size-wise, I liked this matchup, and that showed Nebraska, Jacobson, Hammond, Fuller, all were ready to play play well in the post tonight.
Right, and you look down their rebounding. They had 5 more rebounds. They doubled them up in offensive rebounds. Had 18 second chance points. Beat them in bench points. Beat them in points in the paint. So they beat them in all those categories. And then it's 3-point defense. This defense is so close. We saw Wisconsin coming out of the locker room as a 4-point game. Nebraska cut it to 2 in their first possession. Then Wisconsin, their first 4 field goals of the second half, all threes. They made 11 field goals in the second half. 7 of them were threes. And so that is killer for Nebraska. And the fact that they can't defend that, holding a team to only 11 made field goals in the half, that's not the worst, and that's not a very bad percentage, especially. But when 7 of them are threes, and when a team is just raining them on you, it's tough to beat them. And add that up with the 28 free throw attempts in Wisconsin, pretty atrocious from the line. They only made 17 of those 28, right, so Nebraska did catch a break there in that regard. So that's another thing to look at. But allowing 7 3-pointers in the second half and 11 overall on 18 attempts, it's not going to win you many basketball games, and along with the Nebraska shooting percentages, there's just so much to look at. But I think that 3-point defense is the biggest number to look at in this game.
Well, it also, sorry to cut you off, Tommy, but it also is a momentum factor too. You're trying to scrape back into this game, and maybe you get it to 4 points, and then you give up a 3. Now you're down 7. You create just enough momentum to get yourself within striking distance of one big play, and then followed by another one. We're tied, or we're within a possession, and then a 3. I mean, they have come at inopportune times, these threes. We saw it against this team. We saw it against the Michigan and Lincoln. I mean, it's just an ongoing story.
Yeah, as I said, the narrative has definitely shifted. I mean, you saw guys like Jeff Grossell, who Zach says, anyone that follows Creighton, Grossell was not the first-team All-Big East player that Nebraska made him look like. Tim Miles saw that, made the adjustment, thought, his defense could get by. We knew this defensive unit wasn't going to be as good this year just simply without the size. But, with Miles switching to the zone, my guess is he thought, we'll get better in the post, which Nebraska has done significantly. He said, maybe we'll get by with middle-of-the-road perimeter defense. Not the case. Nebraska allowing Wisconsin to shoot 11 of 18 from three. Nebraska coming into tonight, 9th in the Big Ten in three-point percentage defense at allowing opponents to shoot 35.3% from beyond the arc. Unfortunately for Nebraska, Penn State's only a team that shoots 29% from three. That's dead last in the Big Ten, Zach.
And looking big picture again, I mean, like you said, that Nebraska's got a lot of things to work on overall. But looking big picture, a realistic goal at this point, just a kind of a short-term goal for Nebraska in these last 6 games that they have, is to avoid the Wednesday game in Indianapolis. I think that's a game that they were in last year, and they played Penn State, and it was just a letdown game. I mean, Nebraska obviously.
That was just.
I mean, we know they
really poorly played game.
They went stumbling into that tournament. I don't know how many straight they lost
8.
going in there. They lost 8 in a row. Going to Indianapolis, and then, of course, the letdown game versus Penn State, season over. I mean, so that is a day that they cannot afford to play on. You need that first round, and if they can play a team like Wisconsin, like Ohio State in that first Thursday game, all this team needs is a little bit of momentum. We've seen what can happen when they have some momentum. Unfortunately, a lot of times they've come in and let us down, but it only takes one, and if you can do it in the right time of year, that is a realistic short-term goal for this team, and whether a win or two in Indianapolis gets you to the NCAA tournament or not, at this point it looks like it probably won't. If it can maybe scrape you into the NIT, it gives you a realistic tournament against some teams that you can probably compete against very well, and that would just be a great goal for this team, and to have any sort of postseason to get these freshmen some more experience, to get Nebraska their feet wet a little bit in March.
Yeah, and Reid, to bring you back in, I look at these numbers from this game, and like I said, Wisconsin hits 13 threes last Thursday to beat Ohio State in their fifth straight win. We knew this team was red hot coming into this game. Nebraska knew it. And then you look at the guy who led them in scoring, Nigel Hayes, a guy who's averages 17 points a game, right around in that neighborhood with 20 points at the game high. It's just, nothing surprising really looking at these numbers. Like I said, Wisconsin's been shooting really well as of late. They've caught fire. And, Coach Miles and this team knew that they would have to shut down Nigel Hayes, their one huge scoring threat. Bronson Koenig was pretty effective in this game as well. He had 12 points. And then Ethan Happ, who's a player who's been pretty reliable for them, pretty quiet tonight with only 2 points. But then Vito Brown, that 6'8 junior forward for them, kind of outperforming himself tonight. 18 points, 6 of 7 from the floor, and 3 for 3 from beyond the arc. But just big kind of looking at this game overall, just nothing too surprising when you see like Nigel Hayes dominates, Wisconsin hit a bunch of threes. Nebraska had to know that both of those things were very, very possible going into this game. It just seems like Nebraska didn't do enough to either stop Hayes or try to somehow just play tighter on the perimeter.
Yeah, and it's hard with star players like Hayes and Brown, that come in as star players, not only in the Big Ten, but in the country. And that's a tall test for a very young team, and especially with a team that doesn't have their leader in Siobhan Shields. So, it was a good fight for Nebraska. We just come back to the reoccurring theme of perimeter defense beyond the arc, and no pun intended, obviously. But this is a young team, and hopefully Siobhan Shields, they're hoping he can be back in 2 or 3 games, is it?
There is no definite
timetable.
Yeah, but the hope is to have him back Saturday. He is at home. He's resting with his mother here in Lincoln. So, he is comfortable. He's doing all right. But RJ Pitig actually said on the Husker Sports Network the other night that, they go through UNL's concussion protocol and they continue to show just a few of those symptoms. If they just continue to show a couple symptoms and that they watch out for, then he won't go. And that was basically it. That's what it came down to Tuesday. He just wasn't quite ready. So it doesn't appear to be super long term, but there's obviously no guarantee he plays against Penn State.
And this is good for this young team because when you're captain and when your leading scorer goes out of the game, it really has to make guys say, hey, we got to step up for Siobhan. We got to play better collectively as a team, and we can't rely as much on Siobhan. And when he does come back, maybe the Huskers won't be able or will be able to not rely so much on Siobhan and have him playing 36 minutes a game and just being exhausted. So if Siobhan does come back, I think this is going to be an interesting storyline. Like Zach said, all this team needs is a little momentum, and we could be winning maybe 1 or 2 games in the Big Ten tournament.
Yeah, 6 games remaining on Nebraska's schedule. Their toughest game, Purdue, number 18 in the country, is at home. Then they go at Indiana. Very hard to win in Assembly Hall, as we touched. Indiana's been just really good at home and just really good overall. Indiana did fall to Penn State, but that was in University Park. So, again, Wisconsin beats Nebraska 72-61. So you said it, Reed. Siobhan goes out. You kind of have to step up. Jack McVay, 3 of 7 from the floor, 8 points. Was that, I don't know, were you expecting more from Jack tonight?
Yeah, a little bit. But, Jack Hammond, he's a young kid, and you look at his stats.
Jack McVay.
Oh, McVay, okay.
Yeah, Jake Hammond, Jack McVay. Yeah, it's all right.
Okay, so
old name game.
Sorry, McVay. Yeah, 23 minutes. Looking at his stats here, 3 for 7 from the floor. Like
had 2 fouls before the under 16 timeout in the first half. Yeah,
like Kellan was saying, you look at a guy like Glenn Watson Jr. taking 14 shots. You'd like to see a little bit more distribution there from our starting 5, and McVay, I think, can do a lot better. Obviously, 8 points was a little bit of a disappointment for him tonight, only 3 for 7. But, you're going to have games like that, and you got to rebound, and not only as a player but as a team. And, McVay is obviously going to be a little bit frustrated just because he wasn't able to play as many minutes with the foul troubles, as well as looks like Jacobson only got 23 minutes also. So, like I said, you just got to rebound from this game. It wasn't a bad game at all. I mean, we didn't get blown out.
11 points on the road in the Big Ten. Yeah, that's definitely not uncommon against a team who, as I said, caught fire. Now their 6th straight win.
Wisconsin probably shoots the ball beyond the arc. Probably one of the top teams in the country, I would say.
They weren't very good to start, but they have caught fire. I'll see where they stack up in the Big Ten, but go on.
But yeah, like I was saying, this team just gotta take the next step. They gotta move on from this, and they got a pretty light schedule. I mean, it's not unbearable. They got Penn State twice, which is a middle to bottom tier team in the Big Ten, and you also got Ohio State, who has been struggling quite a bit this year as well, and you got them at the Vault. So.
Yeah, excellent point. The 2 toughest games at Indiana, which, probably you're not going to win. But 18th ranked Purdue, Nebraska almost beat a top 5 team in Maryland to have them down to the wire. Before I throw it to you, Kellan, for final thoughts, Wisconsin 7th in the Big Ten coming into this game, 35.5% from beyond the arc season average. And tonight they hit 61%, 11 of 18. And when Nebraska beat Michigan State about a month or so ago, and, that was the 4th straight win, everyone thought we were marching right back to the tournament. Michigan State had that exact same number, 11 of 18. I'm like, a win's a win, and it's great. But Denzel Valentine, just for example, that his buzzer beater that he missed had a great look, and Michigan State hit 11 threes. They were just draining threes. I said, Nebraska can't allow more Big Ten teams to shoot from 3 like that and expect to win. And sure enough, Nebraska's been letting teams like this shoot well from the perimeter, and the end result is a loss. Kellan, what were you going to say?
I was just going to say, we lose by 11. Again. I mean, Northwestern, again. Indiana, again. Iowa, again. I mean, how many times are we going to sit here and say, well, we lost by 11, it wasn't a blowout, really? Well, if you look back, the only blowout was against Villanova, and we all know how good Nova is this year. So it comes down to we can't quit making excuses and saying, well, we only lost by 11. When's 11 going to turn into that 11-point win on the road?
Well, this is a really young roster, no side. I mean, people knew this was going to be a rebounding year, though.
Okay, but then we've seen potential. But we haven't seen that potential go across that line. And the thing is people sit here and complain, well, we're a doormat team. We don't care. Tim Miles says we want to be the big kid on the block. Well, if you want to be the big kid on the block, coach your team to a win, because right now it ain't happening. You're talking down 11 points. I mean, I'm going to go back to the no excuses again, because to me, if you lose by 11 points and if you've led in the second half, tonight they didn't, you should be able to come out with a win every time.
Yeah, that's a fair point. Nebraska, like I said, they led by as much as 6 midway through the first half. It was only 30-26 at halftime. I agree. the argument can be made that, you shouldn't have let Wisconsin, pull away. I mean, Wisconsin was up by as much as, they were up by as much as 17 in the last 5 minutes. So, I mean, Wisconsin did control this game for much of the second half. But going back to your point, Kelly, how long are we going to make excuses? It's just really, I get the frustration. I get that there's, high expectations after what happened 2 years ago. Last year, the only explanation for last year's debacle, last year's, fall from grace was that, obviously Walter Pitchford was having some issues. There was talk of locker room issues, and then, of course, Teran Petaway had things going on in his personal life with his mom and things like that. It was just internal locker room issues. It showed on the floor. It just resulted in poor play. There was really, with 7 of those top 8 players coming back from 2 years ago, 9 straight losses, there really was no other logical explanation for why Nebraska did as bad as they did. Nebraska was not supposed to do that bad last year. ESPN had Nebraska as a 4 seed in the NCAA tournament going into 14 and 15. Nebraska takes a couple steps back. They were not supposed to do that. I'm telling you, if Nebraska went to the round of 32 in 14 and 15, this year was still going to be a rebounding year because Leslie Smith graduated. Pitchford was probably going to declare for the draft regardless. Same thing with Teran Petaway. You lose 3 big contributors there. And then, like I said, you bring in all these new freshmen with no experience. You bring Andrew White III, who had to sit out all of last year. Just not a lot of experience, not a lot of size in that starting 5. And Siobhan Shields, yes, he's one of your best players, but he's never been the best scorer. He's never been the premier player. He was the second best player when Petaway was here. Now that Andrew White is playing, Andrew White only 10 points tonight, but now that Andrew White is the premier player, Shields, once again, the second best player. And his absence definitely hurt tonight. I mean, Shields driving to the rack against Michigan State was probably the biggest reason why we won that game. Shields was just on fire. He was just playing unconscious against the Spartans back in that victory. So not having him hurts, but this year was not gonna be a tournament year. I get that you want Nebraska to win immediately. These fans, that you want the results. You want to go back to the tournament. Miles just brought in the best recruiting class, arguably the best recruiting class in this program's history. You're not going to turn the tables after going 13 and 19. You're not going to turn around and win 19, 20 games and go to the tournament in 1 year. That's just not how it works. There's no size. There's no center. Go and recruit a center. Keep on recruiting. Keep developing Jack McVay, Michael Jacobson, Nick Fuller, Glenn Watson. Glenn Watson has all Big Ten written all over him. Michael Jacobson has developed really, really nice in that 5 spot. I mean, he's shown more fearlessness. He's been more physical. He's stayed at home. He's been doing his job more. Work to be done, I know. But, I mean, just you got to give this team time. They're young and they're small. I agree with you, Kellan, that, this year, it was. I agree that, yes, Tim Miles has to start coaching to a win. This year was going to be a struggle. Everyone knew that with this roster. But I will say, these next couple of years, Miles has proven he can recruit. He has to prove he can develop these players and get the ball rolling once again. Zach, final thoughts from you.
Well, I just kind of wanted to add it because you say that, I mean, expectations are going into years. I mean, it seems like this team never really does what they're supposed to do. 2 years ago, we saw the outburst.
They overachieved.
Go to March last year. About as underachieved as you could possibly be as a college basketball team. But just looking at everything, and you say that this year nothing was expected. And I'm wondering I'm
not saying nothing, but it was not supposed to be a tournament year.
No, by no means were people going to be up in arms if they don't go all the way to the NCAA tournament.
Yeah.
So,
and if you are up in arms, you shouldn't be because, again, even if you put one of the best coaches in this position with this size and this amount of freshmen, this amount of inexperience, it's going to be tough. And Nebraska's had some really bright years. As Kellan said, there's development, there's potential. It's just not all going to come together in 1 year.
Right, but when you say bright years are coming, my question would be, what are bright years for Nebraska basketball? I mean, if you determine a good, first question would be, what is your definition of a good year? A conference title, a conference tournament championship, or is it an NCAA tournament win? Because if it's an NCAA tournament win, Nebraska's never had one, and your question
0-7,
and your question could be: has Nebraska ever had a successful season? So it's just been one big build-up.
13 and 14 was just a taste,
right? They were so close; they were on the cusp. They were right there, and they couldn't get it. I mean, they've won conference championships, they've won conference tournaments. So you can make an argument, obviously, that they have had successful seasons, but they've never won where it really matters, and that's it's tough to say if this team, in my opinion, I don't know if they ever have had a successful season, but like you said, they're close. I think that this group can be the team. I think that they need to do it soon, though. Andrew White on this team, he's a big key to this team's future.
Anton Gill's eligible
future
next year.
Success, but next year is Andrew White's last year already, so they've got to do something quick. While he's here, they've got to do something notable, a conference champion. I know this is the Big Ten, and it's going to be hard. So a Big Ten...
It's always competitive.
So a Big Ten regular season or conference tournament win is probably not going to happen for this team within the next couple of years. So an NCAA tournament win has got to be the most realistic goal. Get your program on the map. It'll do wonders for your program. Kids who look at a school and say, they've never won an NCAA tournament game, why would I go there? I mean, it's you could say argue
same case with Northwestern. They've never been.
Yeah, you could argue that you could be the guy to do it for us, but like it's not an incentive to go. I mean you see in-state rival Creighton taking kids from that are competing with Nebraska all the time, and that's because they've been to 27 NCAA tournaments. So it's a tough road for Nebraska, but like you said, Tommy, they're close and there are bright years to come. But they've got to do something very soon, and if they do, it'll do wonders for their program.
Yeah, just like to my main message, and we'll wrap this thing up. This is the Beyond the Arc Nebrasketball podcast reaction to Nebraska losing to Wisconsin 72-61. My main message is this: yes, there's been disappointment. Like Kellan said, you see potential in guys like Watson and Jacobson. That's good. These guys are performing well early. But as I said, without Petaway, without Pitchford, without a lot of those big keys from that tournament run a couple of years back, and given the internal chemistry issues from last year, this year was a rebuilding year with 6 freshmen, a couple of transfers with Andrew White and somebody else, and Anton Gill, who's ineligible this year. It was going to be a rebounding year with the amount, and we knew we had no center. I mean, that was the one thing I looked at the offseason, I braced for. I'm like, okay, yeah, we got some guys like McVeigh and Shields who can get some points, but where is our center? Where's our 5 spot? We don't have a Leslie Smith anymore. We don't have a guy as big as Moses Abraham was. Moses Abraham wasn't a very good center at all, but he was still a big guy. Nebraska just didn't have that size. So my main message is this: give Miles a chance to keep recruiting. I mean, he's proven he can do it. Let's see if he can keep doing it. Go get a center. Go get a JUCO, something, a big man, a reliable 5 who can play immediately, because Nebraska needs it. You get a reliable 5, you can put more guys on the perimeter. So you go get that, you keep recruiting, keep developing the guys you already have, Jack McVeigh, Andrew White, Glenn Watson, Michael Jacobson. Keep developing those guys, and I think you'll be fine. Ty Webster comes back one more year next year. I do believe, the pressure's on for Tim Miles. This is his 4th year. Next year will be his 5th. He's proven he can recruit. As I said, he needs to prove he can develop, and I think that'll be the big test going into next year. Just some final numbers from this game. Wisconsin shot 51% from the floor. Nebraska 41%. From 3, Nebraska only 4 of 13. Wisconsin 11 of 18. Free throws, as we mentioned, Wisconsin more than double Nebraska. The Badgers 17 of 28 from the free throw line. Nebraska 9 of 12. Nebraska, turnovers, not a big problem. They haven't really been a problem for Nebraska the last few games. Nebraska only had about 6 turnovers against the Scarlet Knights last weekend. Wisconsin 11 turnovers, Nebraska 10. Rebounds, Nebraska did out-rebound the Badgers 33-28. Points in the paint, Nebraska outperformed the Badgers there, 24-16. Assists, though, not very many, 7. 10 turnovers to 7 assists, not a good ratio. While Wisconsin, 13 assists to 11 turnovers, not a great ratio either, but Wisconsin ends up on the positive side of that. This game was tied once, 2 lead changes, but Wisconsin led for 32 minutes of the 40 minutes in regulation and outscored Nebraska 42-35 in the second half to pull away with a 72-61 win. Andrew White, 10 points in this one. Glenn Watson, team high for Nebraska, 16. Jack McVeigh replacing Siobhan Shields with 8. Michael Jacobson had 6. Benny Parker, 8 points, 3 of 7 from the floor. Ty Webster, 9 points. Got in foul trouble, though. He had 4 fouls, 4 of 11 from the floor, finished with 9 points. There were 6 Huskers who had 3 fouls or more by game's end. Andrew White had 3, Jack McVeigh 3, Michael Jacobson 3, Ty Webster, Nick Fuller, and Jake Hammond all with 4 fouls. Hammond and Fuller each with 2 points in this game as well. And then on the Wisconsin side, Zach Showalter, 10 points. Nigel Hayes, their junior forward, their lead scorer with 20 points. Bronson Koenig, their guard, with 12, and then also Vito Brown, as I mentioned, one of their forwards, only averages about 8 points a game, had 18 tonight, 6 of 7 from 3, and 6 of 7 from the floor, 3 of 3 from beyond the arc. Vito Brown, in my mind, the unsung hero of this game. So looking ahead, Nebraska does play Penn State. Penn State beat Indiana in their place 68-63. That was last Saturday. Penn State, they have the week off, and then they come on the road to face Nebraska. Looking at Penn State, as I said, they're last in the Big Ten in scoring offense, only 65 points a game. 40.8% from the floor, that's last in the Big Ten. 29% from three, that's last. And assists per game, only 9.6, all last in the Big Ten. Both teams give up about 68 points a game, as I said earlier, 10th and 11th in the Big Ten. Free throw percentage, Penn State not very good either, 68%, Nebraska 72%. Rebounding margin, Nebraska +4, Penn State -1. Turnover margin, both teams about that +1 side. Three players you're going to have to watch out for. Brandon Taylor, 6'6", senior forward, the 8th best scorer in the conference at 16.5 points a game and 6 rebounds per game. That's tied for 14th in the Big Ten. Shep Gardner, 6'1", sophomore guard, a lot like Glenn Watson. That'll be a really good matchup. Garner and Watson. Garner's a 6'1" sophomore guard, 13.5 points a game, 74 assists on the year. And then Peyton Banks, their other forward at 6'6". He's a sophomore, playing really well in his second year, the forward, 10 points a game. So Penn State, 3 guys who average double figures, but not a good offensive team. Last in the Big Ten in scoring offense, field goal percentage, and three-point percentage. So that is a Saturday tip-off. 5 o'clock, and I guess Zach would be a good time to mention that we'll be on the call for this one. Zach Penrice on play-by-play, myself on color. There'll be a so about 4:45 pregame, 5 o'clock tip over on 90.3 KRNU. You can catch that on 90.3 FM in the Lincoln area and anywhere else in the world at krnu.unl.edu and on the TuneIn app for your smartphone. That's going to do it for this Nebrasketball podcast, the first time we've ever done something like this. You can find this on youtube.com, search Beyond the Arc, and our show that we did from February the 10th, the whole hour-and-a-half program. You can catch us talk about Nebrasketball, the Super Bowl, and many other things, and you can catch us live every Wednesday, 7 p.m. here on KRNU2, krnu.unl.edu. For Zach Penrice, Kellan Havik, and Reid Hunsaker, I'm Tommy Reza saying so long and good night from Anderson Hall in downtown Lincoln. Again, Wisconsin defeats Nebraska 72-61. Nebraska now 13-12, 4-7 in the Big Ten, faces 12-12 Penn State Saturday evening, 5 p.m. The game on 90.3 KRNU. Thanks for joining us and have a great night and go Big Red.